Logitech's G Cloud is a bit of an oddity in the world of Android handhelds. It focuses on efficiency over raw performance, yet allowing you to play your favorite AAA titles at high quality and frame rates is baked into its marketing. Comfort and materials are priorities in its design rather than some aesthetic appeal to nostalgia, and until recently, it's the only Android handheld I've consistently found on the shelves of my local Best Buy. It manages all of this thanks to a strong emphasis on cloud gaming. From the home screen to the device's name, Logitech's explicit that the G Cloud is intended as an always online machine for those all in on handing off processing to remote servers. It's an interesting proposition that, when it works well, provides the upsides of a modular, high-end handheld PC without the loud fans, potential performance compromises, and high price tag. For folks on a budget who have access to a reliable internet connection and want to play demanding titles, streaming handhelds like the G Cloud can be the most ideal gaming device on the market. But is Logitech's odd, aging handheld still actually worth buying all these years later? And, well, to answer that, let's take a look at the state of the G Cloud in 2026, how the hardware holds up, and whether it has any notable competition. One immediate factor in the G Cloud's favor is its size and shape. It's somewhere in between the size of a Switch OLED and Steam Deck, with a curved shape that nestles nicely in my hands. There's enough weight to feel substantive, but not cumbersome. Unlike many newer Android handhelds, the G Cloud comes with prominent textured grips that feel comfortable to use without purchasing additional accessories. They're flared outward with just enough slope around back to allow my fingers a place to grip without any distracting edges. After spending an abundance of time testing various dual-screen devices, the Mangmi Air X and Ayaneo Air Mini, the G Cloud feels like a spa treatment for my hands. Throughout multi-hour play sessions, the grips, size, and heft contributed toward eliminating hand cramps and fatigue. I would much rather see companies like Retroid, AYN, and Ayaneo steal this design than continue down the thin, glass-fronted, inward-curving designs they've introduced in the past couple years. But I digress. I'd rate the 16:9 1080p 60Hz display somewhere above my LCD Steam Deck in the Mangmi Air X, but well below my more expensive Lenovo Legion Go S. Folks looking for the best possible display will find much better options for the G Cloud's price point these days. Still, I haven't had too many complaints. Colors in motion look decent during gameplay. There's also none of the weird ghosting I see in cheaper Android handhelds when scrolling menus. Its main benefit is really just being a large 7-inch display that makes consoles and PC games easy to play without text feeling too small or small background details being unreadable. If your main focus were to find a reasonably large handheld whose comfort you didn't have to modify, it's hard to think of a better all-around device than the G Cloud, which is also true of its decidedly average controls. Each input feels a bit softer than on most other handhelds. The action buttons and D-pad, in particular, require very little force to push, yet manage to retain a bit of feedback when fully actuated. Shoulders are clicky and light, triggers offer just enough resistance to facilitate accurate analog input, and sticks have soft, grippy caps, which feel smooth with just enough resistance to them for fine movement. Personally, I'd want more tactile face buttons and more feedback on the sticks. Many folks might also prefer their sticks to be Hall effect or TMR, both of which are a bit more typical of handhelds at the G Cloud's price point these days. Still, the G Cloud's input has grown on me over the past few months I've used mine. I'm a fan of the way the shoulders blend into the handheld silhouette, the moving power toggle up top, and even the fact that Logitech added 2 home buttons to differentiate between a system-wide home button and a midstream Xbox button press. It's all well thought out and offers a more comfortable user experience for streaming than folks might find with other devices in the sub $300 price range that are more focused on emulation. Software continues this trend by offering a console-like interface atop Android 11. At startup, the first options available are the most recent games streamed and apps used. Below that is a favorite bar that allows me to pin any apps and games for quick access. Scrolling further down brings up my app drawer and a mountain of recommendations. Scrolling to the right, meanwhile, brings up a library of games available to stream from Xbox Cloud Gaming and GeForce Now. It all feels quick to navigate and takes far less time to start streaming than on more emulation-focused handhelds. My only gripe is the lack of options for fine-tuning the games visible in my library. Especially in GeForce Now, I'd love to filter by storefront to show only my Steam, Epic, or Ubisoft games. Likewise, I'd like the option to hide games en masse to further curate available options. That second part would be especially useful because the interface seems hell-bent on showing games that I don't have access to play. After downgrading from Game Pass Ultimate, the Game Pass menu still shows the same number of games, except most options can't be played without a purchase or subscription. Meanwhile, GeForce Now has random games sprinkled in that aren't available on any of my connected accounts. Those games also can't be played without a purchase, so I'm not sure why they'd be shown. Having my full streaming library available to easily browse is a great feature. Having that library diluted by additional options I don't have access to, well, that's a lot less great. As someone who typically browses his library with purpose, looking for just a single game, extra clutter hasn't really been a deal breaker. If I don't want to scroll, the search bar is an easy way to jump into a specific game. Just note that if you're someone who prefers to browse their library to find random games to play, I could see the lack of editing being more frustrating. Fortunately, any potential software hiccups are made up by one of the best streaming experiences around. Comfortable hardware and a large, decent display make it easy to get lost in a game for hours on end. Streaming platforms have gotten good enough over the past few years that it's often hard to tell between native and streamed games, unless someone's really familiar with the game and really watching frames. That experience will obviously depend on your physical location and your ability to have a good internet connection. But here in Chicago's North Side, whether at home, in a cafe, or over a 5G hotspot in Lincoln Park, I've not had any issues with Game Pass or GeForce Now. Gameplay tends to be reliable and responsive. Meanwhile, streaming from my home consoles and desktop PC via Steam Link, Xbox Remote Play, and the PS Remote Play app tends to be similarly decent, although I have experienced more graphical hitches in general. From personal experience, that tends to be par for the course for local streaming on Android, especially on devices that can't take full advantage of my Wi-Fi 7 router. Regardless, local streaming has been more than playable. Finer tuning with third-party services like Moonlight or PX Play will likely lead to better outcomes in general. Your mileage may vary based on your personal setup or willingness to dig into the weeds. Solid streaming performance also comes with great battery life though. Pushing processing to a remote computer, removing fans, and modifying the OS to only allow a single app to be open at a time draws the most out of the G Cloud's 23 watt-hour battery. Unlike my more performant handhelds, I've yet to fully drain the battery in a single gameplay session. Often, it'll last for multiple days at a time before needing to be tethered to an outlet. It's all a refreshing, low-maintenance experience that I don't tend to get from my other Android handhelds. That's the streaming experience though. How's offline play? Well, up front, if you're someone looking for a handheld that can offer the best possible on-device performance, you shouldn't buy the G Cloud. It's not designed for that purpose. Although, that doesn't mean it's exactly dead weight without an internet connection either. The Snapdragon 720G inside is a mid-range chip from 5 years ago that won't offer the best quality and frame rates in the most demanding modern Android titles. Backed by 4 GB of RAM and running Android 11, you can expect some newer, more demanding titles to not run at all on this machine, or, at minimum, fill the entire 64 GB of internal storage. But again, this is a streaming handheld. Focusing on lighter titles and emulation, away from the bleeding edge, should be expected. Going in with that mindset, performance is actually respectable. Many Android games and ports run just fine. Your mileage may vary depending on the game, but those I've tried, like Dead Cells, feel comfortable to play and recognize on-device controls without an issue. Anyone whose main Android gaming desires are in the same vein, or maybe a few years old, will likely have a reasonable experience. On the emulation front, Wii emulation works great up to 2x resolution. Some games will naturally run better than others, but I've had no issues with Mario Kart Wii, Chocobo's Dungeon, or Sonic Colors. For PS2 emulation, it's a similar story, with 2x upscale feeling comfortable for Ratchet & Clank, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Persona 3 FES. On the handheld side of things, PS Vita emulation works about as well as Vita 3K will allow, with Gravity Rush and FES feeling about as good as they do on other devices. None of this performance is necessarily impressive by today's standards. Lack of active cooling also means that performance and battery life could degrade over longer play sessions. Even so, for folks mainly interested in cloud gaming, the G Cloud has enough performance to allow for a reasonable amount of offline play when needed. All in all, the G Cloud is a very comfortable streaming handheld with enough performance to hold its own when not streaming. I've enjoyed playing games on it, and now that I own one, I would happily reach for it over many of my other Android handhelds in scenarios where on-device performance isn't crucial. But is it worth your money and your time? And, well, I think that's the more difficult question to answer. As much as I enjoy the G Cloud as a handheld, it does retail for $300 brand new, or $150 to $200 secondhand on eBay. That's a steep price point to be at these days. For under $300, an abundance of Android handhelds from companies like Retroid and AYN will be able to stream the same services as the G Cloud while offering enough on-device performance to play lighter Steam games without an internet connection. Meanwhile, budget devices like the Mangmi Air X are creeping into the market with slightly lower performance and slightly worse streaming performance than the G Cloud for half the price. As Android handhelds have improved, and playing Steam games on Android has become easier, the need for dedicated streaming handhelds seems to be decreasing with each year among the type of hardware enthusiasts who might be cross-shopping the G Cloud with Retroid, Anbernic, and Aya Neo. If that's you, then your only reason to buy a G Cloud would be its comfortable design. But I also don't think the G Cloud's ever been meant for hardware enthusiasts. On paper, devices like the Odin 2 Portal, Retroid Pocket 5, and Mangmi Air X seem like much better deals. They can do everything the G Cloud can do, just better, for less money. But that ignores the actual experience of using those handhelds. Android handheld manufacturers have continuously pushed for higher performance and nicer specs while skimping on comfort. It's gotten to the point where many folks default to buying extra grips for their handhelds just to make them acceptable to use. Software, likewise, isn't excellent to use across manufacturers. Even in the best cases, I'd hesitate to hand one of Retroid's or AYN's handhelds to my wife and expect her to know how to properly launch a game 100% of the time, especially when the game's through a cloud streaming service that takes extra steps to access. Neither of those things are true of Logitech's G Cloud. Comfort is the handheld's priority, while the interface is intuitive enough to use without extra coaching. In general, Logitech seems to have made the highlights of its handheld everything that other manufacturers have long neglected. In that sense, the G Cloud feels like an odd Android handheld that can be mainstream enough to sell in stores like Best Buy without worry, even if core handheld enthusiasts have no need for it. When taken from that angle, its competition feels much more limited. It's more versatile than the PS Portal, doesn't require users to know the first thing about emulation, and is much more budget-friendly than the $600+ handhelds needed to play Steam and Xbox games comfortably locally. Absolute offers a very similar handheld for a bit cheaper, but might not inspire as much confidence from the average consumer compared to a common brand like Logitech. Ultimately, the G Cloud feels more in competition with phone controllers than other handhelds, which is just a fascinating position to be in. So, where does that leave us? Well, the Logitech G Cloud is a unique handheld that emphasizes comfort through smart design. Despite its age, it feels great to use to stream games and easy enough to emulate moderately demanding systems without much fuss. Through streamlined software and strong battery life, it's an easy device to hand to a random person with little guidance or risk of frustration. With that in mind, it feels very much outside the typical Android handheld market. Folks looking for the best possible performance who don't mind the jank from manufacturers like Retroid, AYN, or Anbernic have plenty of devices within the G Cloud's price range to choose from. If you're part of that crowd, it makes sense to overlook the G Cloud in favor of those other options. There are plenty of folks not in that crowd though, and for them, the G Cloud may offer fewer headaches and require less tinkering to use to its fullest. For folks where that's appealing, it's still easy to recommend the G Cloud in 2026, especially if you can find one at a heavy discount. Those are my thoughts though. Now, let me know yours. Are you a Logitech G Cloud owner with thoughts you'd like to share? Or are you someone considering the G Cloud who has additional questions? Let me know down in the comments. As always, if you found this video helpful or informative, give it a like to let me know, and then get subscribed for more handheld tech in the near future. That'll be all for this video though. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. Until next time, catch you later.